archives in the bowels of the Vatican and Sevilla in Spain and elsewhere around the world have smidgens of, or little pieces of, an incredibly complete record of Spanish gold mining from the colonial days. For one very specific reason: the king wanted his 20% of that gold. These records are amazingly complete, and what I want to focus on today, what's important to us, is two of these gold mines that were mined in the late 1500s in what today is southeastern Ecuador, and the name of those projects is Logroño and Sevilla. Obviously, I will be making forward-looking statements throughout this presentation. The Logroño and Sevilla were known to be some of the richest mines, gold mines, in the Spanish Empire. And they operated for about 35 years between about 1565 and 1600, when the local people finally managed to get rid of the colonial Spanish. So they operated 35 years, and this map on the left-hand side, drawn in 1574, was drawn right in the heyday of production of gold from those two mines. And Logroño and Sevilla are located between two very distinctive geographical features: the Opano River on the left-hand side and the last mountain range on the eastern side of the Andes before you get into the flatlands of the Amazon basin. And Aurania's chairman and CEO, who's been studying the history for decades, applied to the government of Ecuador for that same piece of land bordered by those two geographic features. And that land, the mineral concessions, were granted for about 500,000 acres that's shown in that white outlined area in the center diagram in southeastern Ecuador. Now, that piece of land, the 500,000 acres that's shown in the red block on the top right of the diagram, taken up completely on the basis of historical data, also lies geologically directly on trend, and the important rocks are the purple rocks on that map, directly on geological trend of a very, very well-endowed gold and copper belt. In terms of gold, that belt contains 26 million ounces of 43-101 resources and over 30 billion pounds of copper. Keith Barron, the chairman and CEO of Aurania, his former company, Aurelian Resources, was responsible for the discovery of Fruta del Norte, which Lundin has just put into production in a very responsible way. I worked with a team of South African geologists there in the mid-90s, and we did exactly the same thing. We went into absolute moose pasture, and we did basic exploration and came up with the discovery of 3 porphyry copper deposits that contained 24 billion pounds of copper. So the management team has a lot of experience in the adjacent belt, and this area in red, the 500,000 acres, is just an extension of exactly the same belt. And we're applying in this new area exactly the same exploration techniques that we used originally in the southern area. We started off with the historical data. This is a jungle-covered area. We did all that we could from satellite imagery. We flew aeromagnetics. We did stream sediment sampling, which is designed to pick up the tiny little bits of metal that have been washed into the streams, reflecting source areas of metals in the drainage of those streams. And we've continually doing soil sampling to try and home in on the exact spots that those metals are coming from. And just recently, this last week, we've added another layer, which is the LiDAR. So this systematic and scientific exploration approach of this ground that was originally taken up because of the history of this area has led us to 5 different areas of discovery potential. 2 of them are gold, and that's what I'm going to focus on mainly today. I'm going to talk just a little bit about the copper because of the Hannon presentation a little bit earlier, and the silver, lead, zinc, I'm not even going to touch that silo. The epithermal gold, and Fruta del Norte is one of these epithermal gold vein systems, and we believe that's what Logroño and Sevilla were, where the Spanish were mining. They lie under, and this is a photograph out of Yellowstone National Park, those vein systems lie under these sinter terraces that are where the geysers are erupting and these hot pools are. We've drilled 2 of these things, but in our area, that land surface is 150 million years old. It's now completely covered by jungle. And what we are facing is coming across a sort of plateau of this sort of sinter and trying to drill in it. Where under there is the gold going to be in these veins? We need help in refining where that drilling is going to go. We've drilled 2 of these things. The results haven't been spectacular in terms of gold at all. We've got a little bit of silver. We're on track to nailing what's underneath these things, but they are difficult targets. We need to get below this. We need to get to where that's been eroded, where the veins are actually exposed. How do we do that? This is a cross-section, a vertical cut through what would be like below that sinter terrace at Yellowstone National Park. And we honestly believe that there's gold there. There's gold on the edges of Yellowstone National Park. So that sinter terrace that we were looking at is shown in the blue on the top of this diagram, but that's a land surface that was there 150 million years ago. The advantage that we've got is that today's land surface is cutting down, the rivers and valleys are cutting down through that ancient land surface, getting us down to be able to see those veins. But how do we actually, because they're simpler targets, how do we actually identify those veins? And the other thing that's important about epithermal gold is that the gold in those vein systems is always in one sort of altitude-controlled band, which is shown in red in these diagrams. Above that, and immediately below the sinter, there is no gold. The veins exist, but there is no gold. But in that part of the vein, there's arsenic, antimony, and naturally occurring mercury. We're using the soil sampling, the stream sediment sampling, to try and pick up those elements. But we also think that we have found something that helps us to find those veins directly. Remember that we're dealing with absolute jungle here. There's 2.5 meters of rainfall a year. This is what it looks like. LiDAR is a relatively new technique, or it's becoming more affordable recently. And it allows us to see through the jungle canopy on the left, through to the floor of the jungle on the right. And that gash in the middle, that thing, that looks remarkably like a vein or a trench. And in fact, we would say, we believe that it's a trench because on both sides of it, you can see the ground that looks as though it's been taken from the trench, the spoil, and dumped on the side of the trench. So for the first time, we're using a technique that can see through the jungle cover and actually potentially identify veins. Not only veins that look as though they've been mined like this, but on this image there are a couple of other north-south linears. Fruta del Norte is north-south. We think that we're actually starting directly to image these vein systems through this new technology. And it disappears under the jungle canopy again. Looking at that, there's absolutely no way that you would know that it was there. Just touching very briefly on the copper, these are 2 vertical slices through the copper model that we have. We have the same sedimentary copper silver that Hannon has 300 kilometers to the south of us. And in fact, just recently we took up most of the ground between ourselves and Hannon 300 kilometers away because these tend to be big systems. In addition to that sedimentary hosted copper, silver, there is porphyry copper, which Chile and Peru are very well known for. That's where most of the copper production in South America comes from. So we've got two types of copper target as well. So 2020 for Aurania is an absolutely key year. I haven't even spoken about the silver, lead, zinc. We have got 5 silos where we think that we have a damn good chance of making a discovery this year. Even on the historical side, we are now, for the first time, as of this week, starting to see through the cover of the jungle, to see through to the jungle floor, and potentially actually see those veins and see those workings, and their field teams going in tomorrow to make sure that we aren't just sort of bullshitting ourselves. In terms of the company, it's quite a tight share structure, about 42 million shares outstanding. We got thumped on Friday as well, along with everyone else. But I think the key takeaway from this graphic is the pie chart on the bottom right. Management and directors own over 50% of the stock. So management is 100% coincident on the side of the common shareholder. Thank you very much.